Good morning. Ethan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Great. If you can hear me, that means everybody else can too. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the first of a series of 7 web seminars that Open to Business is hosting in partnership with Dakota County, CDA, and the Associated Chambers, Apple Valley, Burnsville, Dakota Regional, Hastings, Lakeville, and River Heights. We're glad that you could be here with us today, and we're certainly grateful that Ethan can be here with us as well. Just to share a little bit of information with regard to how today's meeting will go. Q&A is based on the questions that the people that registered for the web seminar supplied beforehand. I'll also take chat questions in the chat feature or in Q&A and provide them to Ethan. We're going to maintain everybody on mute. With that, let's get rolling. And I'd like to introduce to you Ethan Hellier. He serves as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce as a manager and a congressional and public affairs for the Midwest. His current role, Ethan helps develop and implement the Chamber's grassroots legislative and political activities in the Midwest region. Before joining the Chamber in 2017, Ethan spent 3 years working in the Minnesota House of Representatives. He served as the committee legislative assistant for the Education Policy Committee and the Taxes Committee, as well as the communications specialist in the Republican Media Department. He's also worked and volunteered for multiple campaigns in the state of Minnesota. Ethan graduated from St. John's University, Collegeville, Minnesota in 2014 with a bachelor's arts in political science. Ethan now resides in Prior Lake, Minnesota with his wife Kelly and his dog Wrigley, of course, right? With that, my name is Karen Schaffhausen. I am a business advisor for Dakota County, open to business services, all 7 metro counties in the Twin Cities. And I'll turn it over to you, Ethan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And before we get started here, I just want to say if you hear a little noise in the background, I just want to apologize first. I got a virtual first grade classroom in the room next to me. And I also have a dog that was mentioned that likes to say hi to every person walking by. So I just want to say if there's background noise, I apologize. Today, we're pretty much here to talk about the Federal CARES Act. And you've probably heard it was the Phase 3 bill. It was passed by Congress last week and was signed into law by the president on Friday. Next slide. So, as I said, it's been known as the Phase 3 bill. You've probably heard it be called that on the news media. It's just called that because it's the third bill that Congress has passed in an attempt to fight COVID-19. So it's a $2 trillion package, which is 10% of our GDP. So it's very comprehensive. It has the ability to grow to $4 trillion because through its working with the federal reserve. So before we get into things for businesses, I want to talk about a couple things that are here for taxpayers like you and I. A couple of those is that every taxpayer, if you're a single filer, you're going to get $1,200. That's capped at $75,000 and it starts to phase out from that period. Also, if you're a joint filer, you'll get $2,400, and that will phase out once you hit $150,000 or you make $150,000 or more. You also get $500 per child. And again, that phases out after the $150,000 point. A couple other things that are in there for taxpayers and workers. There's expanded unemployment. As we know, unemployment is ran through the state. However, the federal government is giving $600 per week on top of whatever you qualify for the state. And this is going to run through July 31st when it will sunset. All your typical qualifications for getting UI are waived. The looking for work and all that is waived if you're off work because of COVID-19. And also, we've heard from quite a few people wondering that once they're called back to work, will they make more money on UI? No, as soon as someone is called back to work, that benefit will end. No matter if it's July 1st or July 20th or whatever the date is when they're called back to work, they no longer get that benefit. Next slide, please. I see just the first question here. I'll just answer quick. The payments based on your 2019 taxes, yes. If you filed 2019 taxes, to this point, yes, it'll be based on that. For people who have not, it'll be based on 2018 taxes. However, I've heard that there's a change that if you have a big income difference in 2020, that there'll be a slight revisement when you file your 2020 taxes. So kind of looking at everything that's in there for all businesses of all sizes. I'm going to start by breaking down what's in there for big business, or well, for all businesses, and then I'll go into big business, and then where I'll spend the bulk of our time is what's out there for the small businesses. That's kind of the bread and butter of this program, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, which I'll refer to as PPP, or the typical SBA loan, economic injury disaster loan, or EIDL loan as they're better called. And I'll also talk a little bit about the paid sick and family medical leave, which was in the phase 2 bill. Next slide, please. So things that are out there for all businesses. One of them is that there's a payroll tax holiday. Between now and the 1st of 2021, you'll be able to furlough these payments. So it's not something that will be completely cut. You'll still have to pay them. You'll just have a delay in the payment. 50% will be due at the end of 2021, and the other 50% will be due at the end of 2022. However, if you decide to go with this payroll tax delay payment, you will not be able to get a loan under the PPP. There's also some other tax changes. If you operated under a loss for 2018, 19, and 20, you can carry that back another 5 years. You can also accelerate your AMT credits. And you also have the choice to increase your limit on interest deductibility to 50%. And also, this last point here, this is more for restaurants and retail stores, that it's a fix from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Qualified Improvement Property Fix. So if you qualify for that, you're probably already aware of it because you've been wanting it changed for the last couple of years. Next slide, please. Other things that are out there for all businesses is the employee retention credit. Essentially what that is, if you have a 50% drop in your gross profit in a quarter compared to the prior year, you'll qualify for this credit, and you'll qualify until you return to 80%. It's a tax credit that covers 50% of wages up to $10,000 per worker. That's a Washington, D.C. way of saying it's a $5,000 tax credit. Employers with more than 100 employees, it provides the tax credit will be to all workers that aren't providing services. So if you're got a business that's 100 plus workers and you're paying them to sit at home, you will qualify for that $5,000 tax credit for each worker. If you're under 100 employees, you can get the tax credit for everyone that you're paying, even if they're sitting at home, if they're still working. If you're paying them, you can get that tax credit. And just another quick piece is that if you decide to go this route, you cannot get a PPP loan. Next slide, please. So what's out there for the mid-size and larger businesses? You probably heard on Fox or CNN, MSNBC. There's a lot of talk about the airline industry. This is where these loans come from. It's a $454 billion program from the Treasury. It's essentially to support these airlines and other critical businesses. Some of the restrictions in this is that you cannot use the money you get on the tax credit for stock buyback, and also you can't give any higher compensation to those in your C-suites, your CEOs, CFOs. You cannot pay them any bonuses. In fact, there's been a lot of CEOs of larger companies that are furloughing their pay for this year. I saw the CEO of Texas Roadhouse will no longer be taking a salary for this year. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of the bread and butter and why I think everyone wanted to dial into this webinar is what's out there for the small businesses. I've talked about PPP, and I'm just going to further explain what this is. This is a $349 billion loan for all, well, not all small businesses, but ones that are generally less than 500 people. It's 501c3s. It's if you file a 1099, self-employed, all of that. If you normally qualify for a SBA loan, you likely qualify for this. However, if you've always kind of been on the edge and you don't qualify, you may qualify for this, because for restaurants and retail stores, it's not the aggregate number. It's if you have less than 500 at each location. So essentially what you'll do to figure out how much you qualify for is you'll take an average of your month's pay, you'll times that by 2.5, but it's capped out at 10 million, and it's supposed to cover payroll for those 2.5 months. And that's anything. It's payroll, it's rent, it's interest on your mortgage, your gas, electric, water, all that is what that is going to cover. You'll get these loans through your local or national lenders, so Wells Fargo, US Bank, at TCF. This is not through the SBA. It's backed by the SBA, but it's not through them, so you'll be able to get the loan a lot quicker. And this loan is the one that can turn into a grant. If you're willing to not lay off any workers when you take this, it'll likely turn into a grant. And if you don't reduce wages by more than 25%, it'll likely turn into a grant. Now, there's probably been a lot of businesses that have had to lay off people up to this point. If you apply for this loan and you want to get the grant, you have 30 days to bring them back. And if you maintain them through June 30th, you still may qualify for the grant. Next slide, please. And you can learn more about this at uschamber.com/SB Loans. Also, I was listening to a call last night with Congresswoman Craig and the SBA, and they've also offered, if you have other questions, to reach out with them. However, if you're going to the PPP route, you'll likely want to just talk to your bank. And I believe the Treasury said that banks should be ready to go by Friday. So this is, as far as government goes, this is light speed. Next slide, please. So looking at the more typical SBA loans, or EIDL loans, if you've ever had a tornado, I guess no hurricanes here, but a natural disaster of any sort, you've probably at least looked into getting a EIDL loan. This is for any small business, including the faith-based, with less than 500 employees. Again, the 500 employees is kind of fluid. There's a way to calculate if you're a small business on the SBA's website. You go in, you put in a few numbers, and it'll calculate and tell you if you are a small business, because sometimes you can be a little bit over that 500 and still qualify. So this is a $2 million working capital loan, is the max. It's a 30-year term, a rate of 3.75% or 2.75 for nonprofits. You can wait to pay on it for up to a year, but you'll still have to pay on the interest. Loan is based on credit score, so you don't have to provide a tax return. Really what this is doing is it's just an easier way for businesses to get capital. Right now, really focused on making sure businesses have the cash they have to keep going and pay their workers. This is the version of having a bad gash and you're putting stitches on it. There's gonna be more work to be done, but this is the stitch. You can get up to a $200,000 loan without a personal guarantee, and there's no collateral needed for a loan $25,000 or less. There's also a $10,000 emergency grant that you can get. You can normally get it within 3 days, and that's just, we're going to give this to you so you can get going. It's to kind of cover you between now and when you get your loan. What's nice about that $10,000 is it's a grant, so that's that first $10,000 you won't have to pay back. You just think of that as a gift from the federal government. However, if you take a PPP, that $10,000 will count towards your grant. Next slide, please. So looking at a couple things that are in the phase 2 bill, this was passed, it seems like a lifetime ago, but a couple weeks, and it was focused on paid leave. Employers less than 500 workers are required to provide 10 days of sick leave if it's related to COVID-19. So sick leave can be taken if you're ill, if you have to quarantine, or to take care of a quarantined family member or a child during a school closure. Leave is paid at a regular rate, maxing out $511 per day if for self-care, and 2/3 of that rate at a $200 max if you're doing it for a family member. This is 100% backed by the federal government. So if when you provide this, or if you're required to, you will be getting it 100% reimbursed. And this leave is in addition to anything that you already have. So if you provide some sort of family or paid sick leave or a family leave, this is on top of that. There is a exemption for businesses with 50 workers or less. However, it's complicated. If you think you qualify, you should go to the Department of Labor's website, and there's a form of guidance that you can look at to see if you qualify. Essentially, it's only way for business to get out of it is the part where you're have to pay them for a school closure, or if you believe it threatens the viability of your business. So it's complicated. You can look into it, but it's not. It's likely won't be there. But also on top of that, this is kind of, I guess, a bonus for businesses that if you can telework, you don't qualify for paid leave. So I've been working at home now for 2 weeks. So if I was in that position, I would not qualify. Next slide. The paid FMLA. This is also kind of similar to the sick leave. You've probably heard of FMLA. It's been a hot political topic now for quite a long time, and it's got essentially the same qualifications as a paid sick leave. Employers with less than 500 employees are required to provide up to 10 weeks of FMLA if a worker has to take care of a child due to a child care or school closure caused by COVID-19. Leave is paid at a 2/3 of your regular rate, maximum $200 per day, and a $10,000 total, so it won't cost you more than $10,000. Again, this is on top of the paid sick leave, and just so you know that this is 100% backed by the feds. You will get every dime that you pay into this program back. Again, exemption, Department of Labor's website to check out if you might be exempt. And then on top of that, like I said, if your workers can telework, they will not qualify. Next slide. So if you want any more info on this, check out our website, uschamber.com. Also, we have a small business resource that we kind of just rebranded. It's called Co now. It's another good source to see what other small businesses are doing and what you can do. And again, also recommend contacting the SBA by either their website or contacting the local office is another good resource. And then Congresswoman Craig also has been very adamant about being able to help as well. So at this point, I guess we'll take questions.
Ethan, thank you very much. I certainly appreciate your time. I've got a bunch of questions in the Q&A. So the first is kind of going back to the original CARES Act, which is the 75,000 cap gross or adjustable income taxes for payments?
Adjustable. So if your 2018 or 19 tax return says you made less than $75,000 after all adjustments, you will qualify. If you're over that, like you're 76,000, it just starts to slowly phase out. So you'll get something around that, but it won't be as much as 1,200. It'll just slowly phase out.
So one person asks, is there a partial forgiveness for the PPP loan if we're not able to hire back all the employees already laid off?
Yeah. So you can have it be granted to you up to a certain point, but to qualify for 100% of a grant, you need to follow the not cut wages by more than 25% and not cut workers. But you could qualify for a portion of the loan that you paid.
Cool. So let's talk about and just kind of recap some of the CARES Act and the EIDL loan. Do we know, I believe you said this and I just want to confirm, can a business apply for both the EIDL and the PPP loan?
Yes and no. So you probably there's probably people on this call that have applied for the EIDL loan. What you can do is if you think you will be able to qualify or at least partially qualify for the grant, you can go to your private lender and you can get it refinanced into a PPP loan. And you can actually keep part of that EIDL loan too. You just can't use it for payroll or, month to month mortgage interest, rent, anything like that. So you can have two separate loans, but they got to be going to two separate parts of your business.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about small businesses that are sole proprietors. So if they're just individual owners, operators, wearing all hats, do they also qualify for the PPP loan or one of the EIDL loans? And
They do. Yep.
how is
Which
that how is
which
that
is
applied?
pardon?
How is that applied? Is it, I mean, if they just keep themselves employed?
Yeah, pretty much. So obviously it would be a much smaller loan, and qualifications will change quite a bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, essentially. If you're self-employed, or whatever the case is, you'll go to your local lender with all your financial statements. You'll see what you qualify for, and if you follow the guidelines, then yes.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about how efficiently we will see this money. A lot of people are asking, how quickly do we actually think these will be processed? You had indicated the program for the CARES Act is the goal is to have it completed and ready to the banks by Friday. Does that mean that they're going to be ready taking applications and starting to move through the process Friday, or is that just kind of the beginning of it and it's going to take more time on top of that?
That's certainly the hope. I mean, most large lenders, and probably a lot of lenders in Dakota County or Scott County or in the Twin Cities metro area, if they've worked with or if they've done SBA loans before, they should be ready to go. I happen to bank with Wells Fargo, and I got an email from them a couple days ago just saying, if you're a business owner, we're working on this. So it's something they're seeing. Guidance is coming out from the Treasury. But yeah, most banks should be ready by Friday. So, I will get your financials in order and reach out to the bank.
And then for the PPP loan being forgiven, what is the process for that and what's required? Who's the person that manages that? Do we talk with the SBA or do we talk with the bank?
So you only talk to the bank to get the loan. Once you get to the forgiveness part, I'm sure there'll be guidance coming from the SBA, and you'll show again your financials of showing people that you've kept them on, you've kept their pay relatively the same, and then from there the SBA will send you the grant. They're trying to do this efficiently as possible and get and in all these programs to get the money to businesses as soon as possible.
Gotcha. Can you share with us a little bit about who qualifies and who doesn't qualify for the PPP loan? I've got some questions about, sole proprietorship, nonprofits, size of business, type of expenses. So can you kind of walk through just really briefly kind of what's in, what's out as far as the type of business first?
Yeah. So type of business, really, it's anything less than 500. Now, again, there are areas where you can be over 500 and still qualify. You can go on the SBA's website, and there is a little qualifications tab, and it'll show you if you are a quote unquote small business. The nonprofits that qualify for the PPP are 501c3s. But yeah, if you're at 1099 or whatever your case is, if you're under 500, profit making business, you'll qualify for a PPP loan. If you're a 501c3, you'll qualify for a PPP loan. And EIDL loans are open to other nonprofits. So, we've heard a lot from our chamber partners, which are 501c6s. What they qualify is they can go out and get that $10,000 cash advance, which anyone can go get that. If you're a small business, whether you're doing the EIDL loan or the PPP, you can get that $10,000 cash advance right now. Essentially, that's it's, I guess, the appetizer to the meal of the whole loan you'll be getting. That kind of covers that. Is there any other qualifications that people have questions on?
Well, there are a couple of them as far as it has more to do with logistics with regard to specifically what it applies to. So why don't you recap, because I think you and I were both on Congresswoman Craig's conversation last night. So let's talk about the expenses that actually function within the PPP loan, regardless of whether it's a business or a sole proprietorship.
Sure. So it's payroll. It's your gas. It's your water. It's your electric. If you pay rent, if you own the building, the interest you pay on a mortgage. It's really your day-to-day operations that are covered. Like you obviously can't get a PP loan and add on 10,000 square feet to your building. That's not what it's for. That's going to be more post-crisis work. It's to keep you fluid and to keep you running. Just think about it, what Congress wanted to do here. 880 pages, very complicated bill, a lot of things in it. At the end of the day, every little aspect of programming here, it's about getting money right now to businesses. It's not, it's not tax cuts or anything like that or anything, long term. It's temporary cash to businesses now.
Cool. So one really great question is is there interest on the loan for the PPP before it's forgiven? So is there some sort of a payment that goes along with that? How is that structured?
If your PPP loan is forgiven and you qualify for the grant, the interest that was accrued on the loan will be wiped away as well. So it's a full grant. If you qualify for that grant, your out-of-pocket costs as far as applying for that loan should be zero if you, again, keep all your workers on and you don't cut wages more than 25%.
We have some questions that you may or may not know the answer to, but they're specifically related to staffing and how to navigate both unemployment and the loans. So I'll give you probably the overarching macro question, which is how will governments know if someone's called back to work and then no longer be qualified for unemployment benefits? So I think from a business perspective, what I would ask Ethan for you to think about is how there are some people that don't understand how the unemployment works in regards to some of this stuff. And I think it would be helpful to talk about kind of how they work in parallel, but different.
Sure. So the unemployment will still be, in Minnesota, however you get unemployment, you'll still apply to the same way. All the typical qualifications of looking for work, anything that you normally need to do to qualify, you will not need to do here if you're laid off because of COVID-19. What the federal government does is they will give people who are unemployed whatever they get from the state. They'll get another $600 per week on top of that. So, let's say they get $350 a week. Well, now they'll get $950 instead. So it's a bonus from the federal government to keep people flush with cash, to make sure that they can still make their rent payment, mortgage payment, car payment, whatever the case may be. So that's kind of what the federal government's role is in that. Now, if they're but that sunsets the end of July. So July 31st comes around, that program's over. However, let's say we get good news from Fauci, and we're turning a corner, and some businesses, it's obviously we're not going to flip a light switch and everyone goes back to work. It'll be a dial. People will slowly start going back to work. And once that dial is turned and people are going back to work, if you're one of those on unemployment and you're called back in, there'll be guidance for businesses and like state unemployment offices that will be able to interact with businesses to so they can tell them that they're no longer unemployed. But once they're called back, the benefit ends immediately.
Gotcha. We've got one more question and then we'll wrap things up. So how is the process and who is the person or entity that decides who qualifies for the PPP loan?
So the regulation is done by the SBA, but so private lenders will be using guidance from the SBA to see if you qualify. What's nice about the PPP loan over the IDA loan is that you're going to, besides the grant, which is the obvious thing, but you're going to get it quicker too because it's provided through the lender and not through the SBA. However, all these loans, banks are going to be very comfortable handing them out because they're 100% backed by the government. I guess it's you know, for, you know, I guess a bad joke you could say, I mean, if I was work for the chamber, I'd be trying to start a bank today, because these loans are handing out, you know, they're going to make interest on them from the federal government, and that also they're 100% backed by the feds. The typical gamble that a bank can make lending a small business a loan is no longer there. It's 100% guaranteed.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Here, let's kind of wrap things up. Ethan, I'm certainly grateful that you were willing to share your time and information with us today. I know there
Yeah.
are some people that didn't have a chance to finish and have all their questions answered. Please feel free to reach out either to myself or to Ethan with any additional questions, and we'll do what we can to field those questions for you. This is the first of 7 conversations provided in partnership with both Dakota County CDA and the Chambers. If you are interested and do not have the registration for the additional seminars, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself. Thank you very much for participating in this program. Open to Business is a nonprofit contracted by all 7 metro counties to provide pre-business consulting as well as gap financing. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. There is a recording of this seminar. We will be sharing it with our county partners and posted to their websites as well as ours. We certainly appreciate your time today, Ethan. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone tuning in.
Have a good day.
Thanks.